it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL, and today is my first impression of the XENCELABS Medium Bundle. And first impressions matter a lot. I am primarily an art channel. So although I review lots of different things from audio and video equipment to all kinds of fun things, because art is my profession, I tend to scrutinize and be a little bit less forgiving. I'm a little bit stricter on art products. However, long story short is, XENCELABS has made a very good impression, a very good first impression. I've reviewed more entry-level stuff, more high-end stuff, and I would kind of place XENCELABS, just in terms of these products that I'm reviewing today, as being kind of a mid to upper mid level, leaning a little bit closer to what you'd experience with the Wacom product versus something that's a little bit more entry level. So I'm going to walk you through the unboxing experience, the drivers, the software, the functionality, and let you know what my thoughts and feelings are. So, starting off, let's start with the tablet itself. And right away, you open up the box, and your first impression is this is quality. The plastic, there's I believe it's a metal base, so it's got a nice metal frame to it. It's nice and weighty, very well built. Nothing feels cheap. All the buttons feel nice and tactile and clicky. They feel like quality buttons that aren't going to break on you. And the surface itself has got a ever so slightly textured, yet leaning more towards the smooth side, which I generally tend to prefer, because when it's too textured, it tends to wear out your nibs a little bit too quickly. And this is one of the things that the Intuos Pro tend to do. It chewed through nibs a little bit too quickly. Same thing if you use kind of like a paper-like screen protector for an iPad. On the underneath, on the underbelly of it, you've got the logo and you've got rubber feet. Now, Aaron Rutten did a review where he was a little bit skeptical about the rubber feet because the ones on the Wacom, the Intuos Pro, are recessed into it, which will hold it in place a little bit better. He feared, I don't know, I can't speak for myself here, but he feared that these could peel off over time. Only time will tell as far as that goes. And in the front, we have a nice USB-C input, which is nice because you're not fiddling with which direction to put things. Over here on the corners are what you'll realize when you plug this thing in are little LEDs that change color depending on which profile you're on. So tablet itself, very good quality. Oh yeah, and it has a Kensington lock on it. Kensington locks, if you're not aware, are things I never use, but if you ever needed to lock it, tether it to your desk, you can do that. So a little bit of an extra bonus that, that you may or may not use, depending on the situation. The glove, if I could talk about something so incredibly trivial. I actually really love the glove. I own at least 50 or 60 gloves. Every time I do a review of a product or I'm trying out different things, I always get these gloves. And 99% of them are cheap crap that you can tell just by looking at it that the stitching is going to go on it after 2 weeks. Not here. You've got this beautiful double stitching. It's a nice, thick, very good quality fabric to it. And what I particularly love, this is one of the reasons why I love the HeadONE gloves, is because Smudge Guard, is because it has a wristband on it, which I like because otherwise you can get a little bit of chafing on your wrist when you're drawing. So I like the fact that it actually goes below the wrist as well. So even the glove, excellent. And I, by the way, am a good reference for I have big hands. I'm 6'3", so this actually fits my hand perfectly. Then comes the pen case. And the pen case all has this nice, soft, rubberized interior to it, which is actually nice and soft to the touch and it helps to protect your different devices. And you have a thinner pen, which in terms of its size is directly comparable in terms of size to the Apple Pencil you can see right here. Albeit, the Apple Pencil is slightly heavier and has a little bit more girth to it. In terms of feel in the hand is concerned, I kind of prefer the Apple Pencil, although I prefer the fact that this has a rubberized grip and buttons on it. I wish Wacom did it because this tap bullshit just drives me absolutely crazy. But you've got a thinner pen. Now, I generally do not like to draw with thinner pens. I like to write with them. And whenever I'm teaching on my Cintiq, I prefer the thicker one. And I'm drawing, but when I write with a thicker pen, my writing goes to crap. So I actually prefer thinner. All of my writing pens are all thinner. I tend to prefer writing on an Apple Pencil, where I prefer to draw with the thicker one like this. So in terms of weight, for both of these pens, I find they're a little bit light for my taste. Ever so slightly, though. Like if they weighed about 10% heavier or 15% heavier, that might give it a little bit more substance in the hand. And as far as the rubber is concerned, it's a little bit on the slippery side, although over time when that wears, it tends to get a bit grippier over time. But again, with the Wacom one, it tends to be a slightly stickier rubber, so you feel a little bit better grip, although I've never had any issues with my hand slipping. That said, there's a bit of a bonus to this pen that the Wacom pen does not have, and that is a third button that is physically separated from the two rocker buttons here on the top, so you don't accidentally click it when you're drawing, because you can tell when your hand slips over onto the separate button. But that can be quite a substantial improvement, albeit so simple, because I have the two main functions here, but I ever need to do things like shift. If I need to hold down shift and draw a perfectly straight line, I don't have to use my keyboard for that. Or flipping canvas or something else you might use fairly frequently, but not as frequently as the two main buttons here. That's a nice little addition, so I actually like that. So yeah, the smaller pen does not have the third button, that said. Then you have pen nibs, and they have the standard plastic pen nibs, and you have felt nibs, which I find is a nice addition, the fact that you have the option of felt. I just did a review for the XP pen pen display, and it had a bunch of pen nib replacements, but they were all plastic, which is a bit of a redundancy. It's nice to have different feels depending on your personal preference. I like felt tips because they have a little bit more drag. However, they tend to wear out very quickly. So the kind of one that I like the most were the ones for Wacom that came with my Intuos 4, which had a tiny little bit of a rubberized tip to it. So that gives it kind of a finger smudge type of drag to it, which gave you a little bit more control. Albeit using the plastic ones are perfectly fine. And lastly, you have the nib remover up here, and then you have your USB, if I can get it in focus, the USB-A adapter when you want to use it wirelessly. Yes, these work wirelessly. And a USB-A, trying to do this backwards, USB-A to USB-C adapter with a little bit of a XENCELABS logo. And by the way, I like the XENCELABS logo. I'm sensitive to logos. When a logo kind of looks it can kind of take away from the look of the whole product to me. Then comes the remote. I re-recorded this entire review because there was something I didn't realize about this remote that I got pretty excited about. Yes, it also works wirelessly like everything else, which is great. And the battery longevity is apparently pretty good. In terms of a comparison to the Cintiq remote, you can see it's a little bit bigger in the hand. Not that I would normally be using this in the hand. But one of the advantages of this is, number one, it doesn't have a touch sensitive ring on it. So this is, well, number one, I don't use these remotes at all normally, but this touch sensitive thing is very, very finicky in terms of its use and whatever. I just don't like it. Whereas this one actually has a nice analog dial to it, which has a very nice damping to it. So it's a nice smooth, you're gonna see it's very satisfying to turn this. It's a very nice smooth feeling to it with a little click button. You've got all of the buttons on the side and you've got this button on the bottom. Every one of these can be set to something specific. By default, this would be set to changing profiles, or maybe this one's set to change profile. I can't remember which one. But you can set anyone to do anything you want. The other advantage is you can see that this actually has, it'll be a bit flickery because of the refresh rate of my camera, but it's got an LCD screen. See, the flickering is only because the refresh rate of my camera is causing a flicker with the flickering of the thing, but there's zero flicker when I look at it directly. But it's actually giving you visual instructions, and it also informs you when you, for instance, need to plug it in and install the driver. So you can actually see what settings, what inputs you set it to. This one, you have to memorize it unless you use the on-screen display. But that's the reason why this never gets, collects dust. Now with that said, I generally don't use remotes for the simple reason that one of the things that knocks me off my flow is the fact that I have to take my eyes off my screen, click a button and then go back. I don't like doing that. And that's why I found the Toolbox. It's kind of like a D-pad style remote for content creation. or for at least for art and video production and stuff like that, was a far more intuitive and far more useful product that I actually use regularly, because it functions like a D-pad where every knob and switch all has a different feel and size to it. So you intuitively know just by looking where your hands need to go. And I find and plus it's ergonomic. Your hands stay in one place. You don't have to go moving your hand. You can just plunk your hand on it and it's anchored. So in terms of functionality for artwork, I would default go to a TourBox. I find it a much better product for that. That said, however, the reason I decided to re-record this is because I recorded it and then I went upstairs to have lunch, and it just so happened, out of complete coincidence, that one of the recommended videos was Random Frank P's video on great tech under $100. So I just clicked it on and I was eating my salad. And the first product on his thing was this art intended XENCELABS remote. And he said, yes, this is generally for artists, but it also works in Windows. And I went, what? And I went, what? So I plugged it in, and sure enough, you can use this with any app. You can set anything to anything you want, which makes this a tiny little Stream Deck. In that case, yes, I would use this. I wouldn't use it for art per se, but I mean, you have the added bonus of doing that, but you can actually use this to launch apps and to do different functions. I think this is absolutely fantastic. So this gives a reason, even if you're not an artist, just to buy the remote alone. And it's a good quality remote. This is it's nice and weighted in the hand. So you just plunk this on your desk, and if you want to run different Windows functions, super cool. Now, all of this, the final piece is this bag. And it's actually quite nice. It could be waterproof. It feels like waterproof material. And although the fact that it Velcros means it probably doesn't, it's got a little pouch in the front for cables. And then you've got this lovely, very soft velour interior that I could just sit here and just suck my thumb and rub my hands on the inside of this. Yes, I never grew up. Now, if you're a student and you're somebody who's traveling, yes, you need something that can protect your tablet. You don't want to get it scratched up or anything like that, or have your pencils rubbing up against it. So in that case, it's nice and soft and very protective. I personally wouldn't, because I stay home. But then something dawned on me. I just decided to run over there and grab my iPad and check to see if it would fit. And I placed it on top and I went, that's almost exactly the right size. So I took it, and sure enough, it's almost a perfect fit for your iPad. Albeit there's about an inch of give, but this is a snug enough fit, and it's a smooth enough interior with this nice, very soft interior that this can double as an iPad case if you just want to throw something in your case and keep it a bit protected. If it's the iPad mini or the 11-inch, it might move around a little bit more inside, but for the 12.9, perfectly fine. So a little added bonus with the remote, an added bonus with the case. So pretty cool stuff. Now, let's get to the functionality and the drivers. Drivers. I actually prefer the drivers over the Wacom drivers for a couple of reasons. Number one is it's a slightly better design. It's a little bit more of a modernized design. It's a little bit more elegant looking, and it's very intuitive, setting buttons and everything like that. If you've ever used one before, you'll know exactly what you need to do. But one of the things I found particularly pleasant about it is, number one, the fact that it uses just regular pressure dial. It doesn't use the pressure curve like Procreate, which I've never been a fan of. So you just set it and forget it. But I love the tabs, the profiles option, where you can just set profiles to different apps. So you just click a plus button, it creates a new tab, and you set it to what you want. Create a new tab, set it to what you want. And I actually thought at first that it was not saving my settings, because I had actually clicked onto a different tab without knowing it. I created a new tab without knowing it and started working. I was like, oh crap, it's not remembering any of my inputs. This thing sucks. And then I looked and I realized it had changed to a different profile. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of the IQ software. You just set a new profile, set your settings, and forget it. So I think that's really, really nice. And on Wacom software, it's a little bit more finicky and unintuitive, so I don't generally tend to use it, which is really, really cool. And of course, you can set one to be your default Windows settings as well. What's really cool is that on the remote and on the tablet, you've got these little corners. These actually light up. And you can, in the driver software, you can change the profile to change to a different color. So if you're not sure on the fly what profile you're on for which app, although it should change automatically when you switch different programs, you just glance down at the tablet or the remote and you can see the color and you go, oh, okay, I'm in Photoshop. And I generally tend to use intuitive colors like blue for Photoshop, green for Audition, purple for Premiere, etc. That kind of stuff. So you can just glance down and see what kind of profile you're in. Now, the drawing experience. The drawing experience is, in my opinion, 95%, a good, solid 95% of what it's like to draw on a Wacom Intuos Pro. The pen sensitivity, the minimum actuation pressure, the smoothness, the control of line is entirely familiar and very, very comfortable. I had zero issues drawing. The only little finicky thing was I really wish the pen was a little bit grippier and a tiny little bit heavier in the hand, just so I feel like I've got something a little bit more substantial in the hand when I'm drawing. But I forgot about that after 2 seconds of drawing. I even did my own personal drawing a diagonal line, using a ruler on the screen, using a very fine line to see if it, and doing it very, very slowly to see if it picked up on any wobble. In my case, zero wobble whatsoever. I tested it out for around 7 to 8 hours worth of drawing. And in my case, I didn't run into any driver issues, albeit I do respect the fact that Wacom and competitor drivers may conflict with each other. So I always uninstall my Wacom drivers before I test out another company, such as Huion, XP Pen, or XENCELABS. So I don't fiddle with incompatibility issues as far as that goes. But I didn't run into any issues whatsoever. It worked exactly as intended. All in all, I found the drawing experience and the hardware experience to be excellent. And this brings me to my conclusion. Can I recommend this product? As far as everything I've experienced, and the fact that you're spending a little bit less of a premium, it's a little bit less expensive than a high-end Wacom product like an Intuos Pro, I can absolutely recommend this. In fact, I'm very excited that XENCELABS has joined the fray, that they've entered this competition, because a company like Wacom has been sitting on the top of the hill for so long, they can get a little bit complacent and they can get a little bit, shall we say, Apple-y in their pricing, right? they tend to I find that their prices, albeit they do great quality that lasts a long time, but the prices can be pretty astronomical with Wacom products. So the fact that there's a competitor coming in that's offering 95% of what Wacom offers, but for a slightly reduced price, I think that it makes this worth it. The only thing I could not test was the longevity, because I'm not testing this out for years. I've been working on my Wacom products for 5, 6, 7 years plus, and they still work perfectly. I haven't been able to do this, but I'm willing, under the circumstances, to give XENCELABS the benefit of the doubt, also taking into account the fact that they need a little bit of patience. They're up against a company like Wacom that has been doing this for far longer and have a lot more experience. So if they do run into any driver or hardware issues as time moves forward, they can only improve on what they already have. And in my opinion, if they improve on this, then they're going to give Wacom a run for their money, which is good, because our industry needs as much competition as they can get. And I really, really appreciate what XENCELABS has done. So can I recommend it? I can give it 2 big thumbs up recommendation. I am very impressed with this, and I have no problem putting my name behind this product and say, go get one for yourself. If you want one, I'll leave a link below. Go click on it and go pick one up for yourself. It's worth it. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.